just stick with the crayons that we start with. We have to figure out ways to take our surroundings and make it more complicated in a really enjoyable way. Which brings me to the next point. The same people that took two colors and put them together to make something that is interesting, visually speaking, and some thought processes, depending on the color you utilize, rather pretty, are the same people that decided, you know what, we're not done. We're going to use multiple colors. In this case, let's go with 3. The cute thing here is it also utilizes a more in-depth process. Now clearly I'm working on something other than the Oseberg. Instead of all forward, I'm going to turn the tablets forward a total of 6 times. Now listen to this. The crunch means it's working. That crunching sound you hear is the sound of the cards turning upon themselves and the threads at the same time. We have moved 6 turns. At this point, we are going to note that the strings are getting tangled up here. Thank you for bearing with me. But by turning them backwards, we are both going to reverse the pattern that we were working on to give it a more complete set and bit of visual interest. It has done 2 things. It has added to the pattern, but it has also flattened out the strings. They're no longer twisted up here. So on this pattern in particular, rather than having the thing that looks like a mistake partway through, it's intentionally going back and forth. It's making what is known as a twist neutral. So at the start, you twist in, then you reverse the twist, and you end up getting nice little repeating X's going through. Does anyone have questions so far? Now this particular art is really kind of lovely in terms of being able to do something meditative, because you'll see Cindy here
is going rogue.
is going rogue, but you see how many she's done in this short amount of time. Depending on what you're aiming for will determine how much thread you're going to need. So let's say, for example, you want about 6 feet worth of cord, band, trim, whatever you want to call it. When you're working with this for the intention of utilizing it as a band or as trim, you're going to end up utilizing yardage, so there's a whole conversion thing, but you want to start with inches, because, well, we work in freedom units over here. So you're wanting a 6-foot project, it's going to be 72 inches. When you're doing your weaving, you're going to lose about 20% of whatever it is you're working on. So you want to account for that 20%. In this case, that would be 14.4 inches added onto it. Call it 15 to make things easier. What you're going to utilize then is 87 inches worth of string. However, just to make things a little bit more complicated, I want you to notice on the board looms that are being worked on, how part of the warp is going over these saddles and are tied around or clamped under sections that hold everything in place. In order to account for that, I typically add about 5 to 10 inches, depending on how comfortable I am at any given particular point. As beginners, I would recommend starting with 10 inches. So really, what you're going to want for a 6-foot project is going to end up closer to somewhere between 97 to 100 inches of string. Wrap your head around now the thought process that you're going to waste string. It can happen in multiple ways. It might just be the ends of the project. For example, with this one, see all that? At the end of the project, that is going to be cut away. This length here is going to be about 3 inches-ish. I don't know if y'all can see there. When I cut this free of the loom, that excess string there is just going to be cut away. It's going to get gone, has really no other use. I've seen people utilize the the excess ends in various other projects. There are weavers out there who very much believe that any creative project is in its own way alive, and thereby you don't want to waste any part of it. So they'll repurpose it into different projects, be it something as simple as just putting the strings into a clear ball holiday ornament, or say gluing them to a picture frame, or depending on how brave you are with a needle, like using them as little embellishments and embroidery. All kinds of things you can do with them. Next thing to be aware of, tension. Tension is amazingly important when you're working these. Firstly, you want things to be taut but have give. You're looking for more of a trampoline than a large lute string. The reason for this is if it's too tight, you're likely going to end up having uneven pattern, or worse, possibly snapping the warp as you're going through it. Again, when you're doing the weaving, pulling the weft through, you do the tug to have an even tension so that you have, let me make sure that's actually showing, have an even tension so that you have an even band throughout the entirety of it. So let's take this again. Going to go over your shoulder here, Cindy. Let me borrow this for a moment. Sorry. Okay, you can take a small note of how it was tighter here, a bit looser here, and that's fine. Do you know what they didn't have back in the Middle Ages? Machines and micrometers.
Oh, yeah. Consistency.
I was gonna say, if you were gonna say nitpickers, I'm like,
Oh no, those have
excuse
existed.
you.
Those have existed since time immemorial. I think it might have actually been a profession back in the day.
I did.
Vocation today, but a profession back in the
Yeah,
day.
I could see that.
By the way, I figured out the
Oh,
episodes.
okay.
Oh, cool.
Let's see here. Would you mind demonstrating?
Got one more pass and then I can start
No
over.
worries.
So what I figured out with this, is that, hold on. The moment I start teaching it, like it just all disappears. So
Welcome to the wonderful world of explanation.
So you're going sorry, 5 forward.
Okay.
So you start with the AD on top, and you go all the way around to on top again, and go 1 past. That's where I am currently. I've got
Okay.
CD, and then once that's through, I just start going backwards, and then I go backwards until the AD is on top again. And once you do that,
There we go.
Once you do that, it trades off. So I think it comes out to 5 forward, 5 back.
Okay.
But I've been listening to you, so I haven't been accurately counting. And a good visual way to look is you will start to see the other side forming, and when you see a little bit of the black, the center there, that means it's gone far enough that you should be able to go back and go the other way. And I need to do a thing now. I can't weave and talk at the same time, as it turns out.
You learn.
I'll get there. Tighten. I leave the loop and I go back. Beat. Pull that tight.
Now, the statement I made earlier about how mistakes are period, if, as you're going along, you find out that you've done something wrong and you can't figure out how to undo it, the best thing to do is take a breath, put all the cards back at the beginning point, and then move forward from there like you just started.
I'm actually at the point where I'm going to want to start going forward because the 88 are on top, and you can see just that little bit of black in this trap sword on this side. So I'm going to start moving forward again. I left a very big loop over here. It will be okay.
That's fine.
Forward
It's
again.
it's easier to work if you leave about a pinky's width, but if you leave 6 feet, as long as you're able to tug it through, it's fine. It's whatever you are most
Forward.
comfortable with.
I need to get this spun off. This is way too much slack.
No worries, that is something that you learn to do as you go on. notice that her loom is shifting as she pulls, that is perfectly fine. That is why we have the warp anchored to the loom itself.
Okay.
The loom can move as much as you want.
So I'm going forward, so I just got to AD again, which means I'm going to go one more. Tap and through. And you see I've got that little bit of black in this diamond that's about halfway done. And it is, I've got CD on top, which means it's time to start going backwards. And that's the pattern.
Nice. So instead of diamonds, we have little trapezoids.
That's what that looks like.
You can see how it moved from diamonds into trapezoids with what she was doing. Nice. Well done. That is also something I like to make sure people are aware of. If you want to follow a pattern, feel free. If you want to play around, see what you end up coming up with, again, by all means. I found it easier personally to utilize patterns before I started trying to figure out what it is I wanted to make. Lots of patterns are able to be found on Pinterest. That's where I found the majority of mine. And for the longest time, I thought I was utilizing modern day patterns. Turns out the patterns that are on Pinterest, quite a few of them are modern day recreations of historical stuff, especially geometric things like what we're working on now.
Yeah. The reason I figured out the trapezoids in the first place is because I wanted to make it twist neutral. 'Cause
Yeah.
the forward only just annoyed me. And I wanted a way that wasn't obvious, like the blips.
It can annoy a lot of people, I've noticed. Okay, one of the resources I want everyone to be aware of, there is a lovely Scadian, the Honorable Lady Eloise of Finchenfield. That is spelled E-L-E-W-Y-S. If you go to YouTube, look for Weave Along with Eloise, and she goes through so many historical patterns and techniques and methods for both warping your loom, where to find patterns, how it's supposed to happen. It's on. There is a list on the back. She also has a blog, so you can look up, just Google Eloise, and it will pop up. If you happen to be on Facebook, there are multiple tablet weaving groups. There's a historic tablet weaving group. There's a unofficial SCA tablet weaving group. There are just anything you can find, pretty much. If you happen to be part of the Artisans and Meridiers group on Facebook, you will get notifications for Tablet Weavers Tea, which happens, I believe, once a month on Tuesdays.
Cool.
And that is a Zoom thing that people can attend and discuss techniques, what project they're working on, get a little bit more education on the entire concept. There are books that you can find pretty easily. You would want to look for Peter Collingswood, Peter Collingswood. Feel free to write that in. I forgot to put it as part of the resources. He is considered to be one of the top minds in the tablet weaving technique. Everything from basics, what we're working on here, to what's known as double-faced double weave, to what's known as 3-in-1 broken twill. There are just so many different methods that you can utilize. Collingswood. Now, if you're looking for an easy way to start your tablet weaving journey, there is something called a backstrap. Backstrap weaving requires a belt and a sturdy pole. So it can be an overturned dining room chair. It can be the pillar on a bookshelf. Just, it can even be a stick firmly planted in the ground. In fact, that's how it used to be. They would end up tying, if you would mind, they would end up tying one end to the stick. The opposite end would be tied to the belt. You'd have the cards on the strings between the two of you. You'd sit down and just start turning your tablets. So if you wanted to, you could just start with a rigid pole and your belt and go that way. Or you can make one of these board looms. You can also look up different loom suggestions on Google really easily. I would caution you about jumping in as a beginner and investing in an inkle loom. This, for example, cost me about $120. So if you're not wanting to start with that kind of investment, you're going to want to start something small like backstrap or the board loom. Now, to give a bit of insight,
That was the image I used. Facebook.